Yeah. How we doing? How we feeling? What's going on, y'all? Let me turn this music down a little bit. Welcome to a super kind of late night / secret. I guess we'll call it secret. I don't know. It's more like just super late night edition of Fantasy Haus Live. Yeah. For some reason, finished the graphics super late and was like, I still got some energy. Might as well just do the episode anyways, because we usually do these things super late anyways. It's been a while since we've done it on a Wednesday. We did it unannounced because, quite frankly, I didn't even know I was going to do it. So yeah, here we go. We're doing it live. It's a bit late. Anyways, yeah, it was an eventful week. Hope you guys had an awesome Thanksgiving and a great holiday. Enjoyed some good food and some good football. Oh, my cat scratched me this morning, so that's what this fucking thing is. Oh, it actually hurts. It's still a little tender, but it's like, that's when I was like, oh, you can see my, scar. Anyways, but, anywho, so, as per usual, just like we do in all these episodes, we're gonna take a look at, all of the action that happened last week. Take a look at the updated power rankings, take a look at the preview for next week, and then, since we're getting close to the playoffs, and I think there's only, 2 weeks left, like this one and the next one, in the regular season, and then it's playoffs for fantasy football, or at least for our league. And that would be most leagues and most standard leagues, but anyways, digress. And then we'll take our picks for the NFL week to wrap everything up. All right, looks like the music's actually at a pretty good volume. Hopefully, it's not competing with me too much. It seems pretty low, and I don't want to have to scream too much. Well, either way, let's get into it, right? So, we're gonna, let's just get into it. I don't know where I was going with that. Boom. Welcome to the Fantasy Haus live set. You already know it, you already love it. Okay, so as per usual, the first thing we start off with here around these parts is the review of the last week. So for week 12, this is how these matchups actually broke down. So with our first matchup of the week, it was All Hail the Sun God taking on CD's Nuts, and All Hail the Sun God taking home the W this week with a score of 178 to 124 in one of our highest scoring matchups of the week. Then in our second matchup, we had Peanut Oil getting the win against the Young Guns by a score of 123 to 94. Then in our third matchup, we had our number one overall top dog in the league in the Desert Swarm picking up another win by a score of 136 to 119 over Bob's Burgers. Then in our, I think this is fourth matchup here, we had Team Ditka, we had D. Adams family picking up the win against Team Ditka by a score of 125 to 118. And then in our fifth matchup, this one was actually a pretty narrow matchup, not as close as our last matchup, but Kelsey Me Softly, our reigning and defending champion, as takes home the win this week by a score of 108 to 96. And then finally, this was the closest matchup of the week. Team Nuge barely squeaks out the win against Pool of Dumpster Water by a score of 120 to 119. Just insanely close. But, alright, now, like we usually do, we're going to take a look at kind of how these broke down a little bit more closely. I'm adjusting my other screen here. But the first matchup that we're going to start up with is All Hail the Sun God versus CD's Nuts. Lol. Adjusting, make sure we got everything nice in order. Alright. Now switch scene. Well, not really scenes, but some elements here. Boom. Break it down. There we go. Alright. So, starting off at the top as per usual with our QBs with CJ Stroud for All Hail the Sun God, going off for 33 points. The rookie sensation, who is honestly probably in the talks for MVP. I've seen him mentioned for some MVP talks. He's been absolutely insane for the Texans. Going off for 33 points this week. Again, even though it was a loss against Jacksonville off of a insanely long field goal. But Either way, CJ Stroud taking the L this week, but still putting up huge numbers. For CD, on the other hand, here, it was Jalen Hurts who technically did edge him out here a little bit by 3 points, getting 36 points on the week in the big win over Buffalo. If we move into the running back RB1s, we had Aaron Jones, unfortunately for CD's nuts, who did not play. He was actually sidelined and with an MCL injury, if I believe correctly. Then if we take a look for All Hail the Sun God, Austin Eckler, kind of a down week. He's almost always projected like close to, well, you can see it right there at 18 points, so definitely underperformed. Got half that with 9. So, I mean, you'll take any points, but you would love to see more. Then if we move into the RB2s, Isaiah Pacheco had himself a day, going off for 25 points this week, in the win over the Raiders. Then there was Rachaad White for CD's nuts, who went off for 13 points this week, even though Tampa lost to Indy. Then if we move into the wide receiver ones, for CD here, Devontae Adams had a pretty modest day, getting 12 points in the loss to Kansas City. While for All Hail the Sun God, the namesake of the team, Amon-Ra, able to get 18 points in a shocking loss to Green Bay. I don't think literally no one was expecting Green Bay to win that game. If we stay with All Hail the Sun God and look at Keenan Allen, who continues to have a stellar season despite playing injured, getting 22 points this week in the loss to Baltimore, while the namesake for CD's team, CD Lamb, getting 17 points in the win over Washington. Dallas's defense, I should say, is looking absolutely incredible. Their offense has been spotty a little bit at times, but man, they are just absolutely destroying everyone right now. So they're pretty lethal. We're going to see how they shape up once these actual playoffs roll around. If we go into the tight end, starting with CD's nuts here, we have Dalton Schultz only getting 1 point this week, so definitely a bit of a downer in the loss to Jacksonville, while TJ Hawkinson continuing to have an awesome season. Even though that was a shit fest of a game, he was pretty much the lone touchdown of the game, so obviously I'm going to be stoked. Obviously, well, if you don't know, All Hail the Sun God team is mine, so being the owner of TJ Hawkinson, which is weird, but anyways, it was great to get some points there. Now if we move into the flex, we'll just stay with All Hail the Sun God, who had Zay Flowers, who went off for 23 points this week in a win over the Chargers, while for CD and Michael Pittman Jr., who actually also had a pretty damn good day, getting 20 points in the win over Tampa. Then if we go into the defenses, this one was a pretty damn good fight. Dallas, who you almost always to be a buzzsaw now, just because of how lethal that defense has been, how many pick sixes they get. Shout out to Ron Bland, get it for the record. And anyways, 14 points out of Dallas this week, while Miami played the Jets and got 23 points out of Dolphins, which is extreme overproduction. Then if you go into the kickers here, we have Dustin Hopkins able to get 6 points, pretty modest score, even though they lost to Denver. Then Justin Tucker outdid him a bit here by 3 points, getting 9 in the win over the Chargers for CD. That's exactly how our first game matchup broke down. So next one, we are taking a look at the peanut oil and Young Guns matchup. And just like we just did, starting with the QBs, Josh Allen had himself a day. Absolutely incredible to see. 43 points out of position. Granted, quarterbacks have a tendency to get it more often, but nonetheless, Josh Allen showing a bit of that dog in Philly, but they still lost. But 43 points is absolutely incredible. Then if you look at the Young Guns here, Patrick Mahomes, everyone's favorite QB, able to get 23 points this week in a win over the Raiders. And if we go to the RB1s, we have the Young Guns. Oh, I should say we're sticking with the Young Guns here. But James Cook able to get 16 points, who's actually having an awesome, pretty damn good season this year. I know maybe think his rookie season, I think a lot of people were probably expecting too much production out of him, or maybe just that the system would feature him a bit more, but whatever has been going on this season actually been to James Cook benefit. I think he's had like the most yards per carry this season, so that's good for him. Shout out James Cook. But able to get 16 points. Alvin Kamara on the other side here for Peanut Oil, able to get 15 points this week in a loss to Atlanta. We'll stick with Peanut Oil. And Brian Robinson Jr. able to get 8 points in the loss to Dallas this week, while Jeff Wilson Jr. able to get just a hair better, 10 points for the Dolphins when they got their win over the Jets. Then if we go into wide receiver ones, we'll stay with the young guns on this one. But DK Metcalf able to get 6 points this week in a loss to San Francisco, while Deebo Samuel for Peanut Oil had a bit of a showing up game this time. I know he's been kind of up and down. I think that's mostly just being product of that San Francisco offense. But nonetheless, 22 points for Deebo this week. Sorry, it feels like there's an eyelash. Anyway, if we move into the wide receiver twos, we have Cooper Kupp for Peanut Oil, only able to get 4 points this week, despite the Rams getting the win over Arizona. I think he got injured that game, if I remember correctly. Young Guns, Scary Terry McLaurin, able to get 9 points this week because they ran into that brick wall that is that Dallas defense. And if we go over the flex spot real quick, we had Christian Kirk, who had a pretty modest day, able to get 12 points in the win over Houston. While on the other side, Josh Jacobs able to get to 22 points in the loss to Kansas City for If we move into the defenses, we had the Browns able to get 5 points despite losing to Denver for Peanut Oil, while the Young Guns able to get 3 points in the loss to Atlanta. Then finally, if we go into the kickers, we have Jake Elliott getting 9 points this week for the Young Guns, while Matt Amendola looks like he got 1 and is no longer on a team. So that's interesting. But Peanut Oil looks like he will need to go and find a new kicker. All right, and that ends our second matchup. Moving into our third. Boom. Okay. We have... One sec, actually. Now we have the Desert Swarm and Bob's Burgers teams going head-to-head here. In which case we knew the Desert Swarm on this one. Alright, so starting up at the top once again with the QBs. We have Brock Purdy for the Desert Swarm getting 12 points in the win over Seattle Sours. Just making sure you can see everything on the other screen here. While for Bob's Burgers here, Jared Goff going off. Well, he should go. Alright, restart. Jared Goff going off for about 21 points despite the losing to Green Bay. Just a lot of miscues on that offense as a whole. Also, their defense was kind of lackluster, but we'll see. I'm sure they'll bounce back, no problem. Anyways, if we move into the next set of the first set of running backs, and we'll stay with Bob's Burgers on this one. And Derrick Henry going off for 20 points this week in a win over Carolina. 1 second, please. Alright, sorry about that. You know what? Someone got in my contacts, so it was super dry, so I had to put a contact in, or not contact, some eye drops in. Flush it a little bit. Anyways, alright, we're back in action. Alright, looking back. Alright, so I know we talked about Derrick Henry, who got 20 points in that win over Carolina. So for Desert Swarm, it was Tony Pollard getting 22 points in the win over Washington for the Desert Swarm. Then going with the RB2s, we had Travis Etienne getting 12 points this week in a win over Houston. While for Bob's Burgers and DeAndre Swift, who's also having a pretty miraculous season this year, only getting 9 points this week in a win over Buffalo. Then we'll stay with Bob's Burgers, but go into the wide receivers this time. And DJ Moore, who was able to get 22 points this week in a win over Minnesota, while Tyreek Hill able to get 25 points, continuing his stellar season for the Desert Swarm in a win over the Jets. And then Cortland Sutton, who has really turned it on as of late since the Broncos have been pretty much the hottest team in football, which is a weird statement to be saying. But Cortland Sutton able to get 9 points in the win over Cleveland, while DeAndre Hopkins has been kind of stuck on that meddling Tennessee team, only able to get 7 points this week in a win over Carolina. Then if we stay, that was for Bob's Burgers, by the way. Then if we stay with the tight ends, or go into the tight ends, but we'll stay with Bob's Burgers. David Njoku able to get 11 points this week in the loss to Denver, while Trey McBride able to get 13 points in a loss to the Rams for the Desert Swarm. If we move into the flex position, but we'll stay with the Desert Swarm, we have David Montgomery able to get 15 points this week in a loss to Green Bay, while for Bob's Burgers in their flex, they had Garrett Wilson, who had 17 points despite losing to Miami. And there is rumors that Rodgers is going to be coming back soon. There was footage on Twitter today, or X, or whatever you want to call it, of him actually practicing, which is just shocking considering of how short of time ago that injury happened. But I don't know why he would want to come back to that dumpster fire of a season right now, but who knows. Anywho, now if we move into the defenses, we have the Detroit Lions for Bob's Burgers, unfortunately getting -1 points this week in a loss to Green Bay, while the Broncos getting 17 points this week in a win over Cleveland for the Desert Swarm. Then if we go for the kickers, we'll stay with the Desert Swarm once more, who got 9 points out of Brandon Aubrey, who's the rookie kicker for Dallas, able to get 9 points, just that he got 9 points twice anyways, in a win over Washington, while Matt Gay also got 9 points this week in a win over Tampa for the Colts and Bob's Burgers. Alright. Moving on into Team Ditka and the Adams family. Boom. So, starting off with the QBs once again, and Team Ditka, who had Justin Fields as QB1, only able to get 12 points that week in a win over Minnesota, while Tua for the Adams family surprisingly underperformed Justin Fields, able to get 10 points despite playing the measly Jets. Then Tua had some issues as well. Then if we take a look at the RB1s, we'll stay with the Adams family and Saquon Barkley, who had 6 points in the win over New England, while over for Team Ditka, Jonathan Taylor able to get 21 points in the win over Tampa. And I think he got injured in that game too, so that is something to look out for people for next week. Then if we go into the RB2s, Breece Hall able to get 11 points this week for Team Ditka, while for the Adams family, Rahamondre Stevenson able to get 21 points this week for the Patriots, despite losing to the Giants. Then if we go into the first set of wide receivers, we're going to stick with the Adams family here, and Stephon Diggs, who's able to get 19 points, so pretty damn good production, despite losing to Philadelphia, while A.J. Brown for Team Ditka able to get 14 points in the win over Buffalo. Then if we stick with Team Ditka, but we'll move into the wide receiver twos, we have Jordan Addison able to get 9 points this week in the loss to Chicago, while Devontae Smith able to get 23 points in that win over Buffalo for the Adams family. Moving into the tight ends, we have Sam Laporta for Team Ditka able to get 17 points in the unfortunate loss to Green Bay, while George Kittle only able to get 4 points this week despite winning in Seattle pretty big, 31-13. if we move into the flex spot, we'll stay with Deanna Turnley here, who had Nico Collins showing out once again for that awesome Houston team despite a loss. They got 23 points this week. While Jerome Ford, the de facto RB1 there in Cleveland, able to get 11 points this week in a loss to Denver for Team Ditka. And if we move into the defenses, we have the Jets, and despite losing to Miami, still took home 12 points. I think because Tua also didn't play that good. I think they had some sacks, also threw a pick. I don't remember exactly. But if we move into the Steelers also almost matched that, got 11 points this week in the win over Cincinnati. Now if we move into the kickers, we have Evan McPherson able to get 5 points this week for the Adams family despite losing to Pittsburgh, while Jake Moody for Team Ditka able to get to 7 points this week in a win over Seattle. Alright, and now in our second to last matchup, we have our reigning and defending league champion Kelsey Lee Softly taking on Team Better on Paper. Anyways, let's get started. So with the QBs, we have Lamar Jackson for Better on Paper, scoring 16 points this week in a win over the Chargers, while for Kelsey Lee Softly, Trevor Lawrence getting 28 points in a pretty damn close win over Houston. Staying with Kelsey Lee Softly, in their first set of running backs in Bijan Robinson, who's starting to look more like that fantastic fantasy stud that everyone saw in the beginning of the year, getting 27 points this week in the win over New Orleans, while for Better on Paper, Joe Mixon only able to get 8 points this week in a loss to Pittsburgh. Then if we go into the RB2s, we'll stay with Better on Paper here once again, and the Gus Bus this week kind of slowed down a little bit this week, only able to get 4 points despite a win over the Chargers. While for Kelsey Musafi, Khalil Herbert able to get 5 points this week in a returning effort for the Bears against Minnesota. Staying with Kelsey Musafi, but in the first set of running back wide receivers, we have Brandon Ayuk continuing to actually have consistent production there for the 49ers. I don't know why the 49ers is so hard to think of, but anyways, got 13 points this week in a win over Seattle. While Gabe Davis for Better on Paper, it we had 22 points. This was one of those games. I know his entire season has been pretty up and down, but this was his up game where he was able to get 22 points, but they did lose to Philly. Now, if we go into the next set of wide receivers, staying with Better on Paper here, who had Michael Gallup only able to get 2 points this week in a blowout win over Washington, while for Kelsey Musafi, who had Tank Dell able to get 17 points in a loss to Jacksonville. Then we'll stick with Kelsey Musafi, but moving to the tight ends, and their namesake Travis Kelce able to get 15 points this week in a win over the Raiders, while Cole Kmet coming close, getting 11 points this week in a win over Minnesota for Better on Paper. Then in the flex spot, Odell Beckham Jr. Only did 6 points this week, while Adam Thielen also had a very underperforming week, only able to get 1 point in a loss to Tennessee. Then if we go into the defenses, the Chiefs able to get 1 point in a win over the Raiders for Kelsey Musafi, while for the 49ers, they were able to get 15 points in a win over Seattle for Better on Paper. Then in our last position, it is the kickers. We have Tyler Bass getting 10 points this week in a loss to Philly, while for and that's for Better on Paper. While for Kelsey Musafi, they had Riley Patterson, who unfortunately threw up a goose egg. All right, and moving into our last matchup of our reviews. So we have Team Nugent, and Pool of Dumpster Water. This one was a close one. So starting with the QBs, Justin Herbert able to get to 15 points this week in a loss to Baltimore, while for Pool of Dumpster Water, they had Kyler Murray, who had himself a day, went off for 23, but they still lost to the Rams. And in the first set of running backs, Pool of Dumpster Water had Christian McCaffrey, who went off for 30 points this week, also one of the most consistent players in the San Francisco team, in a win over the Seattle Seahawks, while Jahmyr Gibbs for Team Nugent, only 11 points, but still double digits is what you like to see, so you'll take it, in a loss to Green Bay. Staying with Team Nugent, who had Raheem Mostert who had himself a day with 21 points this week in a win over the Jets, while Zach Charbonnet only able to get 9 points this week in a loss to the Niners for Pool Dumpster Water. And we'll stay with Pool Dumpster Water here, and their first set of wide receivers again in Chris Olave, who had 18 points this week in a loss to Atlanta, while Jamar Chase able to get 12 points this week in a loss to Pittsburgh for Team Nuge. Then if we stay with Team Nuge, moving to the next set of wide receivers, it is Mike Evans, who had himself a day, getting 25 points this week despite losing to Indy, while Tyler Lockett, pretty mediocre day at 6 points in a loss to San Fran. Then if we go into the tight ends, we have Pool Dumpster Water and Taysom Hill only able to get 8 points this week in a loss to Atlanta, while Evan Engram able to get 9 points in a win over Houston for Team Nuge. Then going into the flex spot, we have Jalen Waddle. He will get 19 points this week in a win over the Jets, while Alexander Madison, all right day, I guess, getting 8 points in a loss to the Bears. Then if we go into the defenses, we have the Bills only able to get 2 points this week in a loss to Philly for Team Nuge, while Pool Dumpster Water had the Vikings, who somehow pulled out 10 in a loss to Chicago. Probably because it was a lot of field goals in that game. And then finally, in our kicker spots, we have Joey Sly able to get 5 points for Pool Dumpster Water, while for Cameron Dicker, able to get 4 points this week in a loss to Baltimore for Team Nuge. Alright, we did it. That was the reviews. Now, let's take a look at the new and updated power rankings. Okay, so in first and remaining in first is yet again Desert Swarm with a record of 10-2 on the year. Then in the second place once again remains DM's family with a record of 9-3. Then retaking their third overall top dog spot is All Hail the Sun God with a record of 9-3. Then dropping down to fourth is Team Nuge, who also has a record of 9-3. So the first 4 teams are pretty close technically. Well, they're all kind of close, but anyways. Now if we get into the fifth spot, which has Peanut Oil, who improves their record to 7-5 and moves up 1 spot into the fifth, while CD's Nuts drops down to sixth with a 6-6 record. Then Team Dicka also drops down to 7th with now a 6-6 record. Staying at 8 is Kill Me Softly at 5-7, and then and then at 9 we have Pool of Dumpster Water, who actually improves himself up to 9th with a record of 3-9, while Better on Paper falls to 10th spot despite also having the same record of 3-9. Bob's Burgers not out of it yet. They sit in, they have the same record as the other people in 9th and 10th, but they are technically in the dumpster fire right now along with the Young Guns. But Bob's Burgers 3-9 right now in the 11th spot, while in 12th is yet once again the Young Guns, who are sitting at 2-10. All right, and that is the power rankings. So moving right along into the preview for week 13. Scoreboard. So in our first matchup, we have Bob's Burgers taking on All Hail the Sun God. All Hail the Sun God is we just recently, as you saw in the power rankings, retook his spot in the top dogs. So he comes into that matchup 9-3, going against Bob's Burgers, who is the inverse at 3-9. Then if we go look at the second matchup, it is the Young Guns taking on the number 1 overall top dog in the league in the Desert Swarm, and once again that those records are also inverse of each other. Young Guns 2-10 with the Desert Swarm 10-2. Then in our third matchup, and technically it is our game of the week, it is CD's Nuts and Team Dicka. Both teams are sitting at 6-6 this season. Then in our fourth matchup, it is the Adams family taking on Better on Paper. The Adams family comes into the matchup at 9-3. The Adams family is also our number 2 overall top dog in the league with a 9-3 record, while Better on Paper coming into the matchup this time with an inverse also, as well as 3-9. Then in our fifth matchup, I should say, it is our reigning champ, who is still trying to fight his way in somehow into the playoffs. Team Kelsey Me Softly, sitting at 5-7 on the season, taking on Team Nugent, who is 9-3, who is the 4th overall in the league and looking to get back into the top dogs. Then lastly, we have Peanut Oil, who's trying to keep his playoff spot locked down, taking on Pool of Dumpster Water, coming in at 3-9 in the season. Well, Peanut Oil is coming in at 7-5. All right, now the next step is we're going to take a little look at how some of these. We're going to go and take a look at each matchup and just take picks at who we think is going to have the better week. So we'll do that. Bring up our. Break it down. Okay. So in our quarterback matchups, we have Jared Goff in Detroit taking on New Orleans versus CJ Stroud in Houston taking on Denver. Denver's playing very good. Houston just lost that last week. New Orleans, they're kind of mediocre. Jared Goff also probably looking to bounce back as well. Give me Stroud in this one. Denver's defense is, I think, a little bit worse than New Orleans, but they are playing good. Their offenses, at least. I just like how well Stroud's been playing. He's also been producing close to 30 points every game, so good roll Stroud on this one. Wouldn't be surprised to see Jared Goff bounce back big in that game as well. If we look at the first set of running backs here, we have Derrick Henry in Tennessee, in Indianapolis, taking on Indianapolis versus Austin Eckler, and the Chargers taking on New England. Based on the matchup, I would take Eckler. Hopefully he's healthy and can actually do something, but yeah, New England's defense is not good. In the next set of running backs, we have DeAndre Swift, who is questionable, and Philly taking on San Fran versus Isaiah Pacheco and KC taking on Green Bay. DeAndre Swift is taking on a stiff defense in San Fran, but we did beat Detroit. Probably should know, to be honest. But our defense played stellar. But I think Pacheco might have himself a bit of a day on us because we can't seem to really stop the run too much. So give me Pacheco on this one. But I just think that defensive front for San Francisco is so lethal. Moving into the wide receivers, we have DJ Moore's unbiased. This is pretty much a no call. So moving to the wide receiver twos, DeAndre Hopkins in Tennessee taking on Indy versus Keenan Allen, and the Chargers taking on New England. Again, I think I'd probably have to pick on New England here. I think they're one of the people that are fighting for that topic. I know it's pretty much locked up to be Carolinas, but I would choose Keenan Allen. I know he's also playing through an AC joint sprain and probably another injury as well, so could be limited, but nonetheless, he's been playing through and still receiving like 90% of the targets, so it's just kind of ridiculous. Moving into the tight end spot, we have David Njoku in Cleveland taking on the Rams versus Juwan Johnson. New Orleans taking on Detroit. I'd probably take Njoku on this one. Even with all the injuries to New Orleans, I'm just not thrilled with the options. Detroit, good defense. Njoku's actually pretty damn good at tight end. Really depends on who's going to be throwing him the ball there, but even with a brand new QB, one of their favorite targets is the tight end. Rams, they're kind of mid against the pass this year, and I think Njoku has the potential to put up way more points. If we move into the flex spot, we have Garrett Wilson and the Jets taking on Atlanta versus Jaylen Warren and Pittsburgh taking on Arizona. Might have to say the matchup is very juicy with Atlanta for Garrett Wilson. I just don't know who's even quarterbacking the the Jets. Is it still? It's not Zach Wilson, is it? Not Mike White, obviously. I don't know who's throwing the ball. Why do I forget? But either way, he's been producing no matter what. Jalen Warren, I think he's the de facto number one there. Arizona's pretty weak. I'm gonna have to go Jalen Warren, getting edge out Garrett Wilson this one. But the way Pitt's been running things, I wouldn't be surprised if Naj went off. Anyways, moving to the defenses, we have the Detroit Lions taking on New Orleans versus the Dolphins taking on Washington. Ooh. Dallas just ripped Washington pretty bad. Detroit just lost to Green Bay, and they face New Orleans. But New Orleans is bad this season. Washington's also not very good. Give me the Dolphins. I feel like I'm just picking my team. I'm not trying to, but I just like these matchups way too much. Except that tight end matchup, that's not good. In the kicker matchup, we have Matt Gay and Indy taking on Tennessee, and Dustin Hopkins and Cleveland taking on the Rams. I think that Cleveland has Joe Flacco at QB? With Minshew Mania, mediocre defense. Actually, Hopkins is actually looking like a good option there too, but Flacco could do jack shit and they could not do anything because Rams are actually pretty good. So, give me Matt Gay on that one. Alright, moving into our second matchup, which is the Young Guns taking on the Desert Swamp. Alright, here we go. Starting at the top with the QBs, we have Patrick Mahomes taking on KC versus Brock Purdy and San Fran taking on Philly. Can't go against Mahomes deep. Taking on Green Bay, who is just not... Our defense is not that great. If we somehow miraculously shut down Patrick Mahomes, then okay, maybe we'll take it seriously, but right now, nah. Philly is going to be tested, and I just think Patrick Mahomes is going to outdo it this week. In the RB1s, we have Kyron Williams and Rams taking on Cleveland versus Tony Pollard taking on Seattle. Got to go with Pollard on this one. Cleveland, very formidable defense this week. I heard there was a... Oh wait, that's a different team, so never mind what I was just saying. Moving to the RB2s, we have Zach Moss and Indy taking on taking on Tennessee versus Travis Etienne Jr. and Jacksonville taking on Cincy. Ooh. If there's a significant injury to Jonathan Taylor, then I think Zach Moss might be in line to have a good day. Granted, Etienne's consistent usage in that Jacksonville offense, though, he's definitely sets him up to be get some points in that versus Cincinnati. In our first set of wide receivers, we have Tyreek Hill in Miami taking on Washington versus DK Metcalf in Seattle taking on Dallas. Ooh, taking on Dallas is not a favorable matchup, so we're going to have to go with Tyreek, who is looking incredible this season. If we go into the wide receiver 2s, we have Scary Terry in Washington taking on Miami versus Cortland Sutton, and Denver taking on Houston. Gotta go with Cortland Sutton on this one. He's been killing it as of late with Russ throwing to him. So, gonna roll with the hot hand. And they're taking on a Houston team that is going to be fighting back after they just lost very narrowly to Jacksonville. Moving into the tight ends, we have Trey McBride in Arizona taking on Pitt versus Kyle Pitts in Atlanta taking on the Jets. I don't even know. Maybe Kyle Pitts. Jets are pretty good on defense, but I think whoever's at QB's been maybe able to get it to him. I don't actually know. I'm talking on my ass. You got 4 points last week. Trey McBride, are you killing it? Okay, so Trey McBride is clearly killing it. So you know what? We'll just go with McBride, actually. Who is taking on Pitt. That might be issues, but Kyler, he's pretty mobile. Maybe we'll be able to get it to Trey McBride. Moving to the flex spot, we have Christian Kirk and Jacksonville taking on Cincy versus David Montgomery and Detroit taking on New Orleans. Give me Christian Kirk on that one. Then if we go into the defenses, we have the Saints and New Orleans taking on Detroit versus the Broncos, taking on Houston. Ooh, this is not ideal for either. I think the Broncos might have a higher score. I don't know. Maybe. I just don't see. Oh, that'd be insane though if Detroit did drop 2 games back to back. Saints are pretty good, decent defense, but I think just Broncos might put up more. Then if we go into the kickers, we have Jake Elliott and Philly taking on San Fran versus Brandon Aubrey and Dallas taking on Seattle. Give me probably Jake Elliott. I think there's more potential for actual having field goals, while Brandon Aubrey, I feel like a lot of Dallas. It might not always be a complete buzzsaw, but I think Jake Elliott will have more points. Alright, moving into our third matchup, we got Team Dicka taking on CD's Nuts. Alright, so starting off with our QBs, we have Jalen, because there's some buys here, so alright. Moving into the RB1s, Rashad White and Tampa taking on Carolina versus Jonathan Taylor and Indy. Ooh, he's got JT's doubtful. Oof. So it looks like Rashad White's going to have to take that one. Going into the RB2s, we have Chuba Hubbard and Carolina taking on Tampa versus Breece Hall. And the Jets taking on Atlanta. If Breece Hall is good to go, I'd probably take Breece Hall on that one. In the wide receiver matchup, we have CeeDee Lamb and Dallas taking on Seattle versus A.J. Brown and Philly taking on San Fran. Probably, give me CD in that one to have the better day. In the next wide receiver 2 matchup, we have Tutu Atwell and the Rams taking on Cleveland versus Jordan Addison's on bye. Moving into tight ends, we have Dalton Schultz and Houston taking on Denver versus Sam Laporta and Detroit taking on New Orleans. Sam Laporta, I think, just because he's just been absolutely killing it. Moving into the flex spot, we have Michael Pittman Jr. and Indy taking on Tennessee versus Jerome Ford Cleveland taking on the Rams. And I think Michael Pittman Jr. more mid of a defense in Tennessee. Defenses, we have the Cowboys taking on Seattle versus the Jets taking on Atlanta. I think I can't go against the Cowboys, man. They just keep killing it. So many pick sixes. And then in the kicker spot, someone's on bye, so Jake Moody gets it as current standings. Alright, moving into our next matchup, which is D. Adams Family and Better on Paper. Oh, a lot of buys. So there's a buy on the QB, so Tua wins that one. There's a buy on the RB1, so we can take a look at that one. Hopefully, Better on Paper does some subs. It's a lot. Holy shit. Rahamondre Stevenson and New England take on the Chargers versus Joe Mixon and Cincy take on Jacksonville. Ooh, gotta go with Stevenson. That seems like a juicy matchup with the Chargers defense, who's pretty mid right now. RB2's on by. Wide receiver 1's on by. Alright, wide receiver 2's, we have Chris Godwin in Tampa taking on Carolina versus Michael Gallup and Dallas taking on Seattle. Godwin's been pretty much a non-factor, almost feels like, in Tampa. So, but Gallup also has been pretty much a non-factor, so maybe we'll go Godwin against Carolina. Tight end has been on by, flex spots on by. So defense to take a look at, which is the Steelers. Pittsburgh taking on Arizona versus the Niners taking on Philly. Give me the Steelers taking on Arizona. For sure. Just based on matchup mostly. Then if we go to the kickers, we have Evan McPherson and Cincy taking on Jacksonville versus Tyler. Oh, nope. He's also on bye week. Good lord. Alright, 2 more to go. We have Kelsey Softly, the reigning and current defending champ, taking on Team Nuge. So we have Trevor Lawrence and Jacksonville taking on Cincy versus Justin Herbert, and the Chargers taking on New England. Give me Justin Herbert for sure. I like him. He's been doing all right. I know the Chargers have been kind of having an up and down season, but New England's defense is terrible. Then if we go into the RB1s, we have Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit taking on New Orleans versus Bijan Robinson in Atlanta taking on the Jets. I actually like Bijan in that matchup. He seems to be a stellar running back, and he's just killing it versus everyone. why not? In the RB2s, we have Samaj P. Ryan and Denver taking on Houston versus Raheem Mostert. Miami taking on Washington. Probably think that Raheem Mostert would have the better day, assuming he's good to go. Then if we go into the wide receiver ones, we have Brandon Ayuk and San Fran taking on Philly versus Jamar Chase, and Cincy taking on Jacksonville. I think Ayuk might have more points, actually. If we go into the next set of wide receivers, we have Tank Dell in Houston taking on Denver versus Mike Evans, and Tampa taking on Carolina. Mike Evans for sure. If we go into the tight ends, we have Travis Kelce and KC taking on Green Bay versus Evan Engram. Jacksonville taking on Cincy. I'd probably go bet on Travis Kelce for sure. If we go into the flex spot, we have Adam Thielen in Carolina taking on Tampa versus Jalen Warren. Miami taking on Washington. Probably Jalen Waddle, maybe. Nah, Thielen. He's just the number one target. All right. In our defenses, we have the Chiefs taking on Green Bay versus the Falcons taking on the Jets. Ooh. I think the Falcons might be able to honestly do some damage against whoever's quarterback in the Jets. And if we go on the kickers, we have Riley Patterson, Detroit taking on New Orleans versus Cameron Dicker and the Chargers taking on New England. Maybe Riley Patterson, assuming that they like stall out some drives and whatnot. All right, and in our last preview, we have Pool of Dumpster Water taking on Peanut Oil. Starting out with the QB spot, we have Kyler Murray in Arizona taking on Pitt versus Dak, and Dallas taking on Seattle. Probably Dak, even though I do like Kyler's ability to move around. Moving to the RB1s, we have McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. Well, McCaffrey's taking on Philly versus Alvin Kamara, who's taking on Detroit. Not a favorable matchup for either, but probably McCaffrey. He's just been pretty much one of the main focal points of that offense. If we go in the RB2 spot, we have Zach Charbonnet in Seattle taking on Dallas versus Brian Robinson Jr. and Washington taking on Miami. I've been seeing rumors that Kenneth Walker's been injured, so I'd probably go Zach Charbonnet. But they're playing Dallas, and that's not going to be good, so tough sledding right there for sure. All right, moving into the wide receiver ones, we have Chris Olave in New Orleans taking on Detroit versus Debo, and Debo Samuel taking on and San Fran taking on Philly. If Olave clears concussion protocol, then maybe Olave. In the next set of wide receivers, we have Tyler Lockett, Seattle taking on Detroit versus Cooper Kupp, and the Rams taking on Cleveland. Probably Lockett. I think Cleveland's defense is just too good. Maybe I'm believing in it too much. In the tight end spot, we have Taysom Hill in New Orleans taking on Detroit versus Donald Parham Jr. and the Chargers taking on New England. Maybe Donald Parham Jr. depending on the status of Everett. If Everett's can't go, then maybe Parham. Anyways, let's go into flex spot. We have Christian Watson in Green Bay taking on KC versus Marquise Brown in Arizona taking on Pitt. Maybe Christian Watson, but he's so touchdown dependent. If we go into the defenses, Vikings are on bye, so he's going to have to change that one. If we go into the kickers, it's Joey Slye, Washington, and taking on Miami versus Younghoe Koo in Atlanta, taking on the Jets. I'd probably go with Younghoe Koo, honestly. Alright. So that is our last matchup for our previews of coming into one of our last weeks. Now we are going to take a look at what the projected playoff bracket is looking like as of this moment. So for the winners bracket, as of right now, Team Desert Swarm and D. Adams family would be scoring the first round buys. Desert Swarm is the only one that actually has clinched a first round bye. The Adams family, Desert Swarm, Team Nuge, and All Hail the Sun God are all have also clinched the playoffs, while Team Nuge, or not Team Nuge, Peanut Oil and CD's Nuts are kind of on the fringe. So if the season were to end today, Desert Swarm and the Adams family would both get the first round buys. Peanut Oil would take on Team Nuge, and CD's Nuts would take on All Hail the Sun God. Then if we go into our consolation bracket, it would be Kelsey Softly taking on Team Dicka, Better on Paper taking on Pool of Dumpster Water, and Young Guns taking on Bob's Burgers. Alright, and the last thing we're going to do is take a look at the games for next week and kind of take our picks. Hey, and now for this, we actually finally get to take a full pick, or take picks for a full week. Can we just edge that last game? All right, let's do it. Open this. Open. The old screenshots. Boom. Okay. What the lol. Did I not? That's not what I wanted. Lol. Didn't go far enough. There it is. Okay. Let's do it. Let's zoom in a little bit. Nope, that's not zoom. Okay. So Thursday night matchup, I guess, is Cowboys and Seahawks. Give me the boys. Chargers, Patriots. Give me the Chargers. Lions, Saints. Give me Lions. Jets, Falcons. Give me the Falcons. Steelers, Cards, Steelers. Colts, Titans. Colts. Commanders, Dolphins, definitely Dolphins. Texans, Broncos. This is actually going to be a good game. The Texans, I like CJ Stroud. Panthers, Buccaneers. Browns, Rams. I'm going to pick the Rams in a surprise upset. Niners, Eagles. I think the Eagles are going to find a way to win. Chiefs, Packers. At Lambeau. I mean, I'd fucking be happy to be wrong about this next one. But we're going Chiefs. And then Bengals, Jags. Probably Jags. All right. Those are the picks for the week. So Cowboys, Chargers, Lions, Falcons, Steelers, Colts, Dolphins, Texans, Bucks, Rams, Eagles, Chiefs, Jags. This is the Sunday Night Football game, I think. That'll be a great game to see. At Lambeau too. Alright, let's just save this as... What is this, week 12? 13. Save as PNG. Desktop. Week 13. Picks. Alright. Our shoe blows. We've done it. Oh yeah, sick wallpaper, bro. Anyway. Alright, y'all. Like I said, we were going to do a quick little secret stream for Fantasy Haus Live. It's late. It's almost 3 a.m. I'm probably just going to go lay down. Anyways, y'all have been amazing. Thanks for hanging out in stream here. If you guys are checking out this video on YouTube, please feel free to smash that subscribe button. Additionally, if you're here in stream, hit that follow button too. Or, you can subscribe too. That'd be great too, as we're trying to build the community both here on Twitch and on YouTube. But anywho, if you are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to also comment, subscribe, comment. Let me know if I'm doing a good job. You like my picks, you hate my picks. Additionally, you can feel free to share the stream and the video. So, like I said, we're building things up. Get some more eyes on it. See what's up. But other than that, it's gonna do it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This was another quick little one, and yeah, you guys are amazing. I hope to see you guys in the next video, and stay safe. Peace out. Oh wow, well, just messed up my own outro. Well, anyways, peace out. Stay safe. Much love, and I'll see you next time. Bye.